everybody has to be on board. And when people aren't on board, you need to find consequences and make sure that they're on board. And if not, maybe they're not the right people for the team.
What are our strengths? What are our weaknesses? What are our opportunities? What are our threats? And prioritize based on kind of that, some of those things.
Well, have we given them a clear pathway to be able to support you in doing that? Hi, and welcome. Bobby Fernandez here, Agency Performance Partners Performance Coach, and I am joined today by the amazing Therese Potter and the ridiculously amazing
Sure, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Stephen Harrington Dakota himself. So you've got the three of us on board today, and we are going to be talking about what goes into a great annual plan. We have been talking about annual plans. We're getting towards the end of the year, and we just launched a new course for agency owners and leadership teams to help create their annual plan. And this is something that every agency needs to talk about and do every year. And I think a lot of times what they do is they wait. And then they say, okay, it's the first of the year. Let's have an annual plan. And we're already 2-3 weeks into the first quarter, and we get a little bit of a late jump start there. So what are your guys' thoughts on that?
You always have to have a plan, and you have to do it way in advance. You can't just go January, let's go. So I have a great example of this. I was hired to be a high school Spanish teacher, Spanish 1. And I was hired back in June when the school year ended. They had an interview. I was, hired supposedly, and I had to wait on the county. They come back to me a week before school starts and said, you have to have I think it's a tuberculosis shot or something, and you start on Friday. What day did school start? Monday. They wanted me to come in as a teacher on Friday when the school year would start on Monday with no prep. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Any experienced teacher would be like, heck no. So guess who declined that job offer and ended up here at APP?
Oh, we couldn't be more happy.
But it was the right decision, but you can't walk into any classroom not prepared. And that's exactly how you have to look at when it comes to agencies and planning. You have to be very strategic about it. You can't just January 1, this is my plan. And then, you can't do it that way. It just doesn't work. You have to put a lot of thought into it.
Any recommendations from you on that, Stephen?
I think that you need to really sit down and spend the time to think about the big picture. That's some of the worst plan. I mean, some plan is better than no plan. I think Teresa was saying earlier, hope is not a strategy. I hope it's going to happen. But I think that we need to dedicate the time that it needs, especially if you've never done an annual plan before, right? You need to plot some time on the calendar. You need to make a date with yourself. You need to kind of review who needs to be involved and to what level, and then start really working through a plan. And the good news is, obviously, we have that available for you. It's something you can purchase as our new course. But I think even if you don't go that route, you have to dedicate the time and put in the effort and energy to make it effective and see what accountability looks like. A lot of times when I'm working with agencies, we have all these great ideas, and I can, talk to an agency on a call, and 6 months later I call to check in and they still have all the same great ideas. And I'm like, well, what have we accomplished? And they're like, well, eventually this, and I'm like, okay, but when is eventually? Right. So we have to set some standards. We have to put some things in place, and we have to identify what do some of those steps look like to get to where we want to be, and what is an attainable goal for the agency.
Yeah. And I like what you said there about who needs to be involved. I think that's really important, right? Sometimes we don't involve all the right people, or we don't understand who needs to be involved. in helping to create the annual plan. Depending upon the size of the agency, it may just be, the owner kind of going it alone, and that can be difficult too. So you might need assistance. You might need to ask for help from some of your staff if you have some staff, and get some input so that they understand. But then also you might need some outside support. So there's consultants like us that can help you with building that plan and walking you through. But I think identifying who needs to be involved in that process and what that process is going to look like, and then clearly outlining and guarding that time to spend time dedicated to how are we going to move our agency forward the next year. And don't think about, huge, what are we going to do in 5-10 years? Let's just, if we haven't done that already, let's just think about the next year and take it one small bite at a time and walk through each little individual step that we need to do and how we're going to execute it. And I think a lot of times we need to slow down to speed up. Yeah, right. And I think I see this a lot at agencies, and you guys could talk a little bit about this too, is, we got, like, to Stephen's point, we got all these great, wonderful ideas. And I was on with an agency recently where, the leadership team is really responsive to change, but then the execution of the change comes way too rapidly for the team. And they feel stressed and they feel overwhelmed. So can you guys talk a little bit about that?
So one of the things that the agency I used to run, we had in place was everybody on the leadership team had buy-in to new ideas, right? Like 2 different levels. If I decided it was the ultimate thing that was going to happen, it was going to happen most likely, unless you could tell me reasons why it was a horrible idea. Just like the team leads would come and be like, hey, I think my department needs X. I'd be like, tell me why if I didn't understand. And we would make some decisions. Or I'd be like, here's 3 things that I think are great, and here's something you should probably look out for. But we would come up with a list, and as things were added, we would decide what was a priority, right? And then how were we going to roll that out to the team? Because the feedback we got from our team was, like, you come with a flurry of change, and then there's cricket, and not necessarily follow-up, and then you want to know why it wasn't done, and then you change a bunch of stuff again, but nobody ever gave feedback, right? So it kind of goes into the whole, like, coming up with a timeline and a plan of what makes sense for the agency and how fast or slow the team wants to go, and making sure that what we're doing is effective and we're only involving the people that it's going to affect, right? I don't think we need to have an all-staff meeting to talk about changes in the workflow for the like department.
Agreed.
But a lot of agencies are like, well, but we really need to get them to this level. Then that needs to be a meeting with that team, right? Not everybody has to be involved. And I think just defining too, like, who are the stakeholders? How do we hold them accountable? And what does a game plan look like for the rollout of any changes we're going to make?
Holding them accountable. That is huge. So you can't just roll something out to staff, and because Sally has been with the agency 20 years, Sally doesn't have to do this. No, it doesn't work that way.
What do you mean, Terry?
Yeah, so everybody has to be on board. And when people aren't on board, you need to find consequences and make sure that they're on board. And if not, maybe they're not the right people for the team. You have to have these visions and goals, and to get to them, you have to have people on board and they have to cooperate. So in the insurance industry, the industry is changing so much. And we have to have people that are open to change. Technology changes so much. So we have to be open to moving forward to accomplish things that our leaders in our agencies are trying to accomplish. So we have to make that vision kind of like their vision too. So sometimes we have to involve them in that vision. And if we don't involve them and they're not making that vision for you, if you're just making the vision on your own as leaders, you have to make that vision, like, make it look like it's their idea too. So you have to have buy-in. You have to get them to agree with that vision is theirs as well as the leadership. Because if you don't have the buy-in for that vision, then you're going to have people that aren't going to want to follow it. They're not going to want to do what everybody else is doing. And at that point, you need to hold them accountable and say, listen, this is the way we're doing it. This is the reason why we're doing it this way. And this is what we're going to accomplish once we do it this way.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of leadership teams feel like they're always kind of getting people back in line, right? Like they've kind of wandered off and now we have to go over here and pull this person back because maybe they don't understand our mission. They don't understand our vision. They don't understand our values. So, having those very clearly stated vision, values, your team should be able to recite those things and then setting those goals. And I think I know that this is something that Therese is really passionate about is goals and setting goals. And I think we need to be really strategic about goals. Like we have a lot of goals or we have super big goals where maybe they're not so attainable. Now, I'm not saying that stretch goals aren't great, right? We should have goals that we feel confident about, but then we should also say, okay, if we can do this, let's stretch ourselves too and see if we can also do X. But then we have to stay really clearly focused on goals and don't have 18 goals, right? So Grace, talk to us a little bit about goals.
Is this where I jump in? So your goals have to be smart. They can't be silly. They've got to be smart. So SMART stands for specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound. So let me detail those for you. So a specific goal needs to be clearly defined. So what is to be accomplished? Then it needs to be measurable, something that can be qualified or measured, like total numbers. So it has to be facts, not feelings. And I think in agencies, sometimes we try to go on feelings, and you can't go on feelings, got to go on facts. Then it has to be achievable. So it has to be able to be brought about or reached successfully. Can it be achieved? Then it has to be relevant, closely connected or appropriate to what is being done or considered. And then it needs to be time bound. You have to have a target date or time to achieve or accomplish your goal. So keep those in mind when you're planning. Don't make goals that your staff will feel like are unachievable. Now, a great example is that renewal review calls that APP talks about and harps on so much. But the thing is if you really look at it, you look at how many clients renew a month, then you divide that by how many agents you have, then you divide that on how many days are in the week. It only ends up to be like 4 or 5 calls a day. And that's not bad. And then once a year, the first year may be tough, but once you get through it, then it gets really easy. You have to sometimes, like we do with our clients, how we say, okay, if it's a $200 increase, that's only $16 a month. We got to break it down. So like we would break down our monthly increases for a client, we have to break it down for our staff that way. Don't approach them with, hey, we're calling every single client we have, because they're going to be like, what? No.
They're going to be paralyzed with fear.
Yes. So you give them, look at the big picture, look at the big goal, break it down before you present it to staff. So it looks to them like it is achievable, because if your staff feel like it's not achievable, you're going to have, again, people fighting back and saying, oh, we can't do that. And you got to keep it positive. You got to keep a positive outlook on it. You have to be positive and excited, so they'll be positive and excited, because there's really no other way. If you don't get excited about it and get excited for your staff, they're not going to be excited either.
Yeah, I love the ninja trick there, Therese, where, we have to do the same thing with our staff, right? If we go into it and we approach the conversation like we're going to call every client versus, hey, we're going to make 4 to 5 renewal calls per day per person. Let's break it down that way. Maybe that seems, I can do that. I could call 4 or 5 people. But what I also would love to talk about, and Stephen, I know, that you have had some really good experience in this area of, setting goals at an agency from a leadership level. Like, what is a realistic amount of goals for an agency to set?
I mean, I think you can look at a few different things. You want to look at where do we need to be overall and what do we have to do to get there? So we have to know where we need to be. And we might have 100 goals that have to be accomplished in a year. Or some agencies might only have 6 that need to be accomplished in a year. But I think that there's not a good right, wrong, or indifferent amount. I think we just have to prioritize them. And what is each one going to take to complete, right? What are our strengths? What are our weaknesses? What are our opportunities? What are our threats? And prioritize based on kind of that, some of those things. I mean, I think realistically, 2 to 3 major things a quarter is huge. But there's other agencies that have they've done the major stuff. Now they have 100 little things that all need to be tackled. So why not 10 a month, right? Depending on what the team looks like. I don't think there's a secret. I don't think there's a secret right, wrong, or indifferent amount. But we also, again, have to have the clear path of how that affects each role and how we're going to roll it out, implement it, and hold people accountable.
Right.
Like I work with some teams, we can roll out 40 changes tomorrow. They're all going to listen. They're going to adapt to about 30 of them, and we're going to have to remind them of the other 10. But they're like, just give it to me. Let me learn it. Give me a month. I'll ask questions along the way. Hold me accountable in 30 days. Mm-hmm. Other teams are like, you wanted to change one thing, and it's just super awkward, and I don't know what to do. Right. So you have to know your own team as well.
Mm-hmm.
And, are they drivers or are they passengers? Are they ready to roll and they're looking for the change so they can adapt quickly? Or do we have to slow the roll? So you have to know your team.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I also think, too, that what we see a lot is sometimes agency leadership operating out of fear of their staff as well. And this can be a really sensitive topic. And, some people may get a little cringy and hit stop on this long banter right now. So I'm going to say this is that your people have to be on board. And this is your agency. And so treat it like that. This is your agency. And if this is something that you are passionate about, you cannot operate under fear that they'll all get up and walk out. Or, the people that want to row along with you and they get it, they see the vision, they see the values, they're going to be your cheerleaders. They're going to jump on board and they're going to say, hey, I'm going to try it. I'm going to give it the old college try, and I'm at least going to try, and then we're going to see where we're at. But I think a lot of times leadership teams let off the gas because I hear a lot of, well, my team's not going to do that, or my staff won't do that. Well, have we given them a clear pathway to be able to support you in doing that? Have we clearly identified how they win and the things we want them to do? And then can we track those things metrically? And can we share that information with them so they know when they're doing a good job and where maybe we're missing the mark sometimes? And then we have really open, honest, transparent communications, not to get anybody in trouble, but to get them on track. Right. And guess what? Sometimes people aren't going to get on board and they're not going to want to do the thing, but then they don't make the cut on the Super Bowl team.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think people need to remember sometimes that sometimes some of the stuff that's hard is actually good for us. I always use the example, my ex-husband, I always wanted to order food on the phone when I lived in Guatemala, third world country, McDonald's delivered. I was young. I didn't want to cook. So if I wanted to order food, and there was other stuff. There was Asian food and that kind of stuff too. But he always forced me to call an order. And at the time I was learning Spanish. So he would force me because if I wanted the food, I had to call. He wasn't going to call. And I can tell you, I learned how to talk on the phone in Spanish really well because of it. Hard things sometimes look really hard at the moment for us, but sometimes it's good for us. It's a challenge. So make sure that we show that to our staff too, that, hey, this is a really cool challenge. I would really love for you guys to meet this challenge. Give them incentives to meet the challenge, hold them accountable for that challenge, but really show them that, challenges can be hard, but they can also be really good for us.
Yeah, I think it's super rewarding, right? We're all working on some personal goals right now that are challenging each of us. And is it comfy every day?
Ugh, no.
No.
You have really, really good days and you're doing great like yesterday. And then you have days like today where you just can't get it right.
Yeah.
But tomorrow will be a good day because I am determined that I am going to do this.
I think another thing we really need to be conscious of as we're doing the end of year planning or the strategic planning for the next year is owners tend to have a lot, and I'm going to say that, a lot of great ideas. Right? And I'm smiling and nodding while I'm saying this. Because we deal with agency owners all the time, bless their souls. We love you to death, right? Nothing against you. But a lot of times I should be like, great, tell me everything you want to do. Then 5 minutes later, I'm like, great, do you have anything to add? And they're like, yes, I have 17 more things. I check in 2 weeks later, it's like, and 6 more. And I'm like, we need to pick 2. We need to pick 2 to start, and we need a clear path of what those 2 look like. Once we're successful with that, you get to pick 2 more, right? And you can keep adding to the list and reprioritizing throughout the year. It's you, right? But I think we get so excitable sometimes as leaders or as agency owners because we see the big picture of where the team could go and see the potential for the agency and see all these cool things that are happening is we forget a lot of times our teams are living a little bit more in the shadows than we are. And they're just seeing the day to day, right? It's like, I'm dealing with the front lines. I'm dealing with the nasty customers. I'm dealing with the rates. I'm dealing with blah, blah. And now you want me to do this too. And as an owner, you're like, well, yeah, because I know in 6 months you're going to be so much happier and less stressed than you were before. And the team's just like, oh, another new thing. So I think as part of our planning, we really need to look at, kind of bring it back to the beginning, right? Who's sharing in those visions and those decisions? And if there's a key stakeholder, involve them when it makes sense. Right. But I don't think we need to share the laundry list of all of our hopes, dreams, and passions with the agency as part of the planning. And we're just sharing the bits and pieces they need to know to not make it overwhelming for everyone.
I agree, Stephen. I always use the reference of, I would love to take my grandkids to Disney World one day, but guess what? Mimi's not going to drop the information until we got tickets, until we got a hotel, until we got the budget. There's a lot of planning that has to go into the background before you drop it on everybody and say, hey, we're doing this thing and getting them excited about it. Right. So,
but Mimi, I want to go today. Are we going today?
I know, right?
Are we going today?
That would be my grandson. He would want to know what time we leaving. So I think, wrapping this all up, this was a great conversation. I really appreciate you all for joining me. There is a lot that goes into creating a great annual plan. And we've given you some tips and tricks today, but I think the biggest thing is just setting aside the time to create the plan, being very thoughtful and guarding that time with the plan, then getting your ideas on paper, involving the people that need to be involved when they need to be involved, but understanding, as Stephen said, that as the owner, you are the only person most likely in the agency that has the biggest picture of what is going on because you're the only one that has all of the intelligence about what's going on in your agency. And your staff is very in it every day. So we need to have a pathway and how do we bridge that gap between the owner and the staff and make sure everybody knows what they need to know, create really consistent feedback loops for people to give you their feedback, for you to adopt that, have the metrics available so people can see how are we doing? How are we not doing so well? And what do we need to do better to help us get to our goal and achieve our goal by the end of the year? So we appreciate you very much for joining us on this blog banter today. Had a lot of fun. And we will see you next time. And please go out and check out all the great things we have to offer you this month. We have an end of the year planning team survey questions. We can come out and speak at your agency if you'd like. If you're going to do a reveal of your annual plan, we are available to come out and speak with you. And then we do have some great product discounts going on right now where you can go and get some swag for your team if you want to give them some incentives. So
With the new Yeti mug.
Oh, love that. Oh, I need one of those. Ooh, love it. So we will see you guys next time.
Bye, guys.
Bye.